They're included in every single game, and we see them constantly throughout a playthrough, yet I rarely ever see people talk about them. Trainer classes, the descriptions used for the many trainers we come across on our journeys. What a category is to a Pokémon, a trainer class is to a human. You've got Pikachu, the mouse Pokémon, and Blue, the rival. It's trainer classes like that that show that, unlike the category in the Pokédex, trainer classes are created from the perspective of our player character. Blue is our rival after all. I doubt he introduces himself like that to every single person he meets. And yet, it seems like trainer classes do play a larger role in the Pokémon world than they're really given in the games. Entire groups of people dress the same, use similar Pokémon, to the point our character can easily recognize which folks are part of the same class. And what makes that even more impressive is the incredibly high number of trainer classes in existence. There are more than 300 of them in the main games, and the number gets even higher when you include spin-offs. And hidden among that assortment of trainer types are some really interesting stories, bizarre decisions, and top-tier designs. In a way, trainer classes serve as a rare look into the social demographics of the Pokémon world and the place battling has within it. It is shown to be an activity done by all ages, for example. Youngsters have been present as a trainer class since the first games, usually depicted as young boys just a few years younger than our protagonist. Their female counterpart has been the lass ever since its introduction, but these girls are clearly a couple years older than the youngsters, especially from Gold and Silver onwards. They're around the same age as most protagonists, I would guess. Black and White showed us that even younger kids also partake in Pokémon battles when it introduced preschoolers, the youngest of all trainer classes. They have since frequently reappeared, characterized by the low amount of prize money handed out. In fact, Gen 5's version of the class is the lowest paying trainer class in Pokémon history, with a base payout of only 4 Pokédollars. Congrats, you took the kids' lunch money. On the other side of the age spectrum, Pokémon battling remains popular as well, with elderly gentlemen having been present ever since Gen 1. Gen 4 introduced a female counterpart, the socialite, now known as Madam. What is noteworthy about these two though is that they show that, for some reason, only older folks who are well off appear to still actively engage in Pokémon battles. Coming across trainers in this age range isn't really rare at all, but them being a class that isn't gentleman or madam definitely is. Experts qualify, but they're exclusive to Hoenn. Paldea has students at retirement ages and that's about it. Trainer classes that fall in the generation right under there, around the ages of 50 or late 40, are also not very common, and barely even existed for the first few generations until the veteran was introduced in Gen 4. At first, this was seemingly meant to appear a tad older, with the overworld sprite straight up being an old man, and the battle sprite also looked arguably the oldest it has ever looked. Subsequent games made these men and women look a tad younger and more lively, with especially X and Y's designs being absolute bangers. And speaking of Gen 6, those games also use trainer classes in an interesting way to either convey a stark cultural difference or show our protagonist limited but still present knowledge of the Colossian language, which I presume is French. Several trainer classes in this game function identically to ones we've seen before, except they now use French words instead of English ones. There's garçon, which means boy, used for male waiters at restaurants, as well as monsieur and madame, which are just straight up the gentlemen and what at the time still was socialites, except now in Kalos. Monsieur and madame are French for man and woman. Weirdly enough, there is no fille, meaning girl, class to complete the set, nor has this kind of practice ever returned. It's kind of a shame if you ask me. I would have liked seeing some Spanish trainer classes in Paldea, for example. If you really squint your eyes, I guess you could count cabbie as a British English word that is only used as a class in Galar, but I think this one ties into another interesting trope much better. Trainer classes that are just straight up real life everyday jobs. Apparently it isn't frowned upon in the Pokémon world to engage in battles under company time. That much is clear when looking at the slew of trainer classes that are introduced every game that are no more than just jobs. Gen 1 brought us engineers, scientists and sailors. Johto added the quite essential policemen and teachers to the Poké world, and this trope hasn't stopped since. Cameramen, maids, office workers, gardeners, pilots, bakers, postmen, all have been introduced into the Pokémon world. Some also have specific traits about them. Doctors and nurses serve as healing stations when you're on the go. Reporters will interview you afterwards, and janitors commonly use poison types or Pokémon who love to clean. That is another quite often seen trope, by the way. Trainer classes that absolutely love one or occasionally several types of Pokémon. In fact, every single type has one or multiple trainer classes that fit this bill. Steel, Ground and Rock don't really have a class to call their own though. They often share names like Hikers and Workers. If you'd stop here, trainer classes actually seem like a pretty normal and straightforward mechanic. One that you could say only really makes the Pokémon world more realistic and resemble our own. And while for the majority of them, I would agree, there are some weird things going on here. One such example is the odd Pokémon Ranger conundrum. For those of you not in the know, Pokémon Ranger is a spin-off series on the DS that focuses not on you collecting and battling with Pokémon, but instead protecting and monitoring the safety of the region and its nature. Pokémon are only caught temporarily here using a special capture styler and used once before they return to the wild. Despite these mechanics being very different from the core series games, several ties have been made between the regions this trilogy is set in and the main series games, making it more than likely than not that Fiore, Almia and Oblivia, the settings of these games, do exist on the same Poke-Earth as say Kanto or Kalos. One thing is for certain though, the connotations of the word Pokémon Ranger are not the same. Whereas in the spin-off series it's a prestigious and important job, almost like a cross between a wildlife ranger, police officer and even spy, in the core games it is a trainer class that exclusively seems to refer to wildlife rangers. They're mostly found on some of the more dangerous routes, protecting the safety of the wildlife Pokémon and the travelers that pass by. Interestingly enough, this class was most prevalent in generations 3, 4 and 5, i.e. the generations that actually overlapped with the spin-off series. After that died with the Nintendo 3DS, Rangers would only return in X and Y, remakes notwithstanding, meaning we really lost Pokémon Rangers in multiple ways with the step to the 3DS. And while we're on spin-offs, I want to talk about the trainer classes of Orre, the setting of Pokémon Colosseum and XD Gale of Darkness for a second. While these games are definitely spin-offs, they're by far the closest they can get to the mainline games without actually being that. They're filled with battles identical to the core series, and that includes all kinds of unique trainer classes. And I have to say, if we assume that trainer classes are the player characters' own terms, then Wes and Michael, the protagonists of Orre, have some dry humor. This region doesn't just have your everyday lady, they have a lady in suit, clearly an important distinction. And what to think of Glasses Man, Bandana Guy and Casual Dude, not to be confused with a clearly different Casual Guy. What Chaser is supposed to mean, I have absolutely no clue, but it is a very common trainer class in Orre, a title it shares with a similarly common Hunter, which sounds a lot more intimidating than it is. Why the male variant wears a pilot hat, I have no clue. Orre also has two different Old Man classes, hilariously divided by how much the protagonist likes their character. You have the Fun Old Man, seemingly cheerful fellas, and the Curmudgeon, which means someone is cranky or surly. It seems like quite the unnecessary distinction to me, but I love that it exists. Trainer classes with strange terms to describe a person as, especially when you just met, are not exclusive to Orre though. A perfect example from the core games is the Cue Ball, the term red, blue, yellow and fire red and leaf green uses to refer to bald, intimidating biker figures. This term was changed to Roughnecks when the class returned in Diamond and Pearl, probably because, even if not super harsh, it is a bit of a dig at bald people. What I do like though is that you can now also take this as a sign of Red's character, as all games where he is the protagonist feature the name Cue Ball, almost as if it's indicative of his character and how he isn't scared of these buff guys and instead makes fun of them, if not just internally. It's in strong contrast to Florian and Juliana from Scarlet and Violet, who come across this guy in Kitakami and describe him as a scary dude in the Japanese version of the game, which seems a bit much. Another strange term that also originates from Kanto, albeit the only game that doesn't feature cue balls, Let's Go, is the Coach Trainer. These are the folks that help you train your Pokemon and then reward you with TMs and candy upon defeat, but I've always found the term used to describe them to be odd. The way I see it, Coach Trainer is a tautology, two words that mean the same thing. It's a round circle, a fat Snorlax, an ancient fossil Pokemon. All coaches are trainers and all trainers are coaches. It's strange to me to put these terms together. And even if you really want to combine these terms, training coach would have been significantly better if you ask me. But at least with these classes, it's only the name that's odd. Some classes are just bizarre outright, and even Generation 1 is guilty of this. Kanto has a surprisingly high amount of jugglers, and is really the only place in the Pokemon world where they're found. In battle, they will often use Drowsy and Hypno, and constantly switch their Pokemon, almost as if they're juggling their Pokeballs. I think it's a fun, albeit annoying concept, but in universe it makes for a bit of a weird reality, where Kanto seemingly has a cultural interest in Pokeball jugglers. Hell, Team Rocket even has one in-house to entertain the troops, Juggler Dalton, who is found in the Silphco building and clearly a member of Team Rocket, despite not being a grunt or scientist. It's surprisingly tame entertainment for a villainous group, I have to say, but hey, if they like it, why not? Trainer class you would expect in Team Rocket's ranks, yet never does, is the Burglar. As ridiculous as they sound, these truly are folks you apparently catch mid-break-in and challenge to a battle. I will say though, this class is significantly more random in the localizations than it is in Japanese, as in the original language they're referred to as post-fire burglars, as in they loot burned down buildings. I still wouldn't call it a great career, but it at least explains what I found all over the Pokemon Mansion, why they frequently use fire types, and why Blaine employs some in his gym. So while this class is definitely an odd one, it's at least found in an understandable location. The same cannot be said for a couple of others. Clowns and the similar Harlequins aren't a strange concept, and in the Pokemon world I can definitely see them using Pokemon in fun ways. What is significantly less fun is that several Harlequins in Unova can be found on Route 7, a route that can definitely be characterized as wilderness overgrown with tall grass, while also being right next to the Celestial Tower, the Pokemon burial ground. Yeah, I don't know about you, but that's not the kind of place I would want to run into a freaking clown. But I guess that at the very least, those clowns can make a case as to why they're there. Maybe it's the bright and sad people's day at Celestial Tower, or maybe it's simply the result of Unova being quite an urbanized region. What does not make sense whatsoever though, is the situation found in several games. One of the rarer trainer classes between Gen 3 and 5 is the Guitarist, and while the name doesn't specify it, their design and preference for electric types makes it abundantly clear we're not talking acoustic country style guitarist here. And yet, Hoenn, Sinnoh and Unova have these guys present in the most random routes in the middle of nowhere. We're talking Central Hoenn, not close to any city or town, Sinnoh Route 218, which is mostly water, and even freaking Chargestone Cave. Even if we assume that these electric guitars are plugged into battery-powered amps, which isn't shown by the way, or powered by their Pokemon, that still leaves the question. What kind of person heads out into peaceful nature with nothing but an electric guitar? A prick at best, a psychopath at worst, that's who. The peace and quiet of the wild Pokemon isn't high on a guitarist's list of priorities, that's for sure. And finally, I want to end on a bit of a sour note, an unfortunate trend in recent Pokemon games. While I doubt trainer classes will ever truly be cut from the series, it's a fact that the last two games have definitely placed them on the back burner. Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet are now the two games with the least amount of trainer classes in the game. For Legends Arceus there is an excuse, seeing as the focus of the game isn't really on battling and the game is set in a time before battling became widespread. For Scarlet and Violet, the reason is that these games feature a lot, and I mean a lot, of trainers of the new student class, which can be people from every walk of life. Young, old, male, female, big, thin, all kinds of people who usually fall into different trainer classes in other regions are considered students of the Academy in Scarlet and Violet. Whether this is something that is truly a sign of things to come, or whether this is merely a stylistic choice to show how prevalent the Academy is in Paldea is hard to say, but I would consider it worrying. If you haven't been able to tell, I like trainer classes, and wouldn't like to see them go. But what about you? How do you feel about this ever-present trope? And if you were a trainer, what trainer class would you be? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all my future Pokemon content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.